Thank you.
All right. Hi. Well, again, welcome everybody. Today we have our very special guest, the team EUCI or EUCI, the European Crypto Initiative. We have Marina. She's a member of the blockchain think tank in Slovenia, and she's a leading advisor in blockchain projects since 2017 and a contributor to projects like Token Engineering Community, Koala, and DGov. And then we have Simon, who's the president of the French Crypto Association, ADAN, A-D-A-N. And he's a lawyer and an entrepreneur and a contributor to nonprofits in the crypto space as well. And we have Florian, who's also a lawyer and software developer at the same time. And he is the president of the German Blockchain Association, Bundesblock, which we already talked about a couple of times also in this meetup. And yes, they are going to talk with us today and present their activities in regarding the regulation of crypto and tokens in the EU. And now my slides are stuck. No, we have a they're going to present their activities as the team, as the European Crypto Initiative, and they are talking to members of the European Parliament regarding MiCAR, but they probably can explain that to us better than I can. So I would just hand over to any one of you guys who wants to start, and after the presentation we're going to have a discussion about the issues with crypto regulation in Europe and what's to come. So I'm looking forward to that.
Jacob, should we also give first the insight for the next meetup, the topic? So usually we do this before we start. So for all of you,
sure, we can do it now.
Yes. So since mentioned in the beginning, we're having this here for almost 4 years. So that for the next 38th meetup, we will talk about DAOs and governance. So we will split different topics around this topic between Christian, me, and Jacob. So we will talk about DAO in general, how it's structured, and then we'll look into example of governance tokens, for example, with the Aave or other platforms who have governance tokens, and Christian will explain in more detail how a DAO can look like in a smart contract. So this will be the topic for the next meetup.
Okay, so who wants to take the screen?
I'm going to do that. This is Florian speaking on behalf of the guests. So thank
Wonderful.
you for having us. Thank you for inviting us. It's a huge pleasure to talk to my German friends and non-German friends alike, but part of this Mainz crypto community. That's very cool. I'll share my screen. Yeah, okay. So I'm here with my two wonderful colleagues, Marina and Simon. You will get to see them and listen to them in a few moments. We each take turns throughout the presentation. We are here as a rather new organization or organization to be. We call ourselves the European Crypto Initiative. And we have formed around essentially this common goal to ensure that the regulation of crypto assets in Europe going forward is as progressive as possible and allows for permissionless innovation in the way that we have seen in the past creates really amazing innovations such as the DeFi ecosystem, DAOs, and other goodies that all of you are probably familiar with. A few words on the UCI. Yeah, maybe first my colleagues here in color. So Marina, Simon, and me, we're all, you could say, blockchain experts in our respective domains and countries. And we've come together basically to save Europe. And but more on that later from everybody. The goal of UCI is threefold. We educate both the public, but in particular regulators, actually. So people in Europe that make laws. We actually also create and comment on proposals on regulation, so policy proposals. So we're actually really going into the trenches, and we work on text, and we look at every word, and we really want to make sure that the laws and rules that are currently being made and will be made in the future about crypto assets and related topics, that they really and allow us to continue to innovate in the way that we have done so far. Thirdly, collaboration with other organizations, non-profits, for-profits, associations, communities, DAOs, more and more. So collaborate with everybody who shares our values and our goals. Yeah, we want to go boldly where no one has gone before. By that, I mean that we realized both in our home countries, but also even more so on the EU level, that when it comes to making actual policy proposals, it becomes really hard to find people willing to engage on that level. And the reason is pretty clear. It's very hard to actually do this work. It's not simple to come up with a general and abstract rule that is going to apply to every future case around crypto assets indefinitely. And that's essentially what's currently happening. And so doing this kind of work requires a lot of domain knowledge. It requires an understanding of laws and regulation and so on and so forth. And it's very time consuming and often not a lot of fun, right? Like, of course, having ideas and visions is great, but then actually going to the text and doing all this detailed work, it can be pretty painful. So we want to be that organization that does that. We've done that actually for the past 8 months, and we in fact had a lot of fun doing it, but this is something very particular to lawyers. We really have fun with the pain. Like we are masochistic people. That's what lawyers typically are. Okay, so why is it necessary? Well, I've hinted at it. There is regulation coming. It has taken the name of MiCAR, which is short for Markets and Crypto Assets, and it's the attempt by the EU to regulate everything about the crypto asset industry. And as you can, as this idea already suggests, this is quite a big undertaking and cannot possibly work if without a lot of conversations, let's say. And this is really what we did. The current issues in the MiCAR proposal, just to name 3 of them, is that basically the most innovative use cases are possibly illegal under MiCAR. There are unproportional or disproportionate regulations for the startups relative to the incumbents, so the big market players that already are established in the traditional financial industry. And there are very high burdens, partially just impossible burdens, for example, in the area of stable coins and other infrastructure that we have gotten used to in the crypto space. So a lot of problems. And we are trying to shape this in a way that we can actually, can continue having these meetups and talk about amazing new things that are happening. But let's start from the beginning. And with this, I will give it up to my colleague Marina, who will take us through a bunch of slides to kind of set the stage for what MiCAR is trying actually to regulate. So please, Marina, if you would be so kind. I'm happy to skip to do the slides for you, Marina.
Thank you.
Just let me know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Florian. And thank you, Jacob, for the introduction. So we'll start at the beginning, and the beginning is the current situation in the crypto market. I think the graph says it all. So that's what's happening in the last year. We have seen a dramatic increase in the value, but also in the number of crypto assets and exchanges. So Florian told you that we are working on this initiative for the last 8 months. And we can see the difference in the numbers, how they're changing and growing. Maybe Florian, if you just can go back with the slide. I think it's quite important to understand that there are more than 9,500 crypto assets. And when we are talking about MiCAR wants to cover, everything. Like we want to understand what are the different types and how to regulate the different types. So now we can skip and go to the next slide. There's more than 370 exchanges all around the world, but the biggest and most of them are not based in EU. This is the analysis that we did. The only one is based in Luxembourg, is Bitstamp, and I mean from this this slide you can already see that the American market and the market in Asia is much stronger. Also due to some legal clarity exchanges had when they were establishing, for example, legal entities years ago. And the next slide is also something that speaks by itself. When we are talking about the industry and where the startups, where the innovation is happening and where do the startups get the financing? The biggest market is the USA. Then we have China, Switzerland, UK, and the other European markets and member states, they're not even mentioned in this graph. So what we are seeing is that the Europe at the moment is not a leading market when it comes to crypto assets, but we think that we can change this if we have a good regulation and a flexible regulation. So the next slide is showing the current crypto assets that we have in the market. There are different kinds, as I was saying before. I'm sure you're all familiar with the protocol tokens, the ones that are the most famous ones. Then we have synthetic assets, digital objects that are NFTs that are booming in the last months, and governance tokens, utility tokens, stable coins. So those are all different crypto assets. What is also very interesting is that when we think about the timeline, MiCAR has been drafted maybe a year ago, and in that time NFTs, DeFi were not booming as they are today. So I think what we are also trying to the message we're trying to convey to the regulator is this is something very innovative and new that is coming up and growing, and we need to understand it to support it also from the legal point of view. And the next slide is also talking about that. So we have we have seen that there are 3 different groups of emerging startups, industries, and the current trends that are the established companies and projects, emergent, and the primitives that are very important for the whole ecosystem. So the established ones are the most common ones, the most known ones, the first ones like protocols, exchanges, security, hardware and software, data collection, mining, staking. So those are all activities that have been there for years. Then we go to the primitives that are also very important and that are kind of the building blocks of the industry. We talk about digital identity. This is also very interesting when we think about it in connection to DAOs or different organizations. RegTech, of course, central digital bank currencies, and decentralized storage, for example. So those are the primitives that can also help other activities and projects. But the emergent ones are the ones that are the innovative ones, the most interesting ones, and are also the ones that when we speak again to the regulator, they might not have a lot of knowledge about them. So decentralized finance, NFTs, DAOs, stable coins, payments in crypto assets, all these new innovative ideas and projects that have grown significantly in the last year. So here, this presentation, I don't know if Florian, you want to take it from here, but what we have been discussing and what we think is very, very important, especially when talking to the regulator, is to make them understand what is the difference between centralized and decentralized organizations, but also the basic of decentralized organization, that is a smart contract, that it's the new thing.
Should I take it over?
Yes.
Okay. So really, as the story goes, I think in terms of setting the stage where MiCAR comes in, is that the context in which this regulation, which we will talk about in more details in just a few moments, the time when this regulation has been drafted, and let me just go back to the previous slide to make it really clear. Basically, it has been drafted in the time when what we see under this column established has been what kind of everybody understands crypto, has understood crypto to stand for. Basically, we have the Bitcoin and the Ether, and then, we have these, in a sense, centralized financial entities such as, Bitstamp, which is this European exchange, but maybe even more famously Coinbase, which has just done an IPO, hardware ledger companies like Ledger and Trezor, and the mining entities and so on. So this was the context in which the European Commission and the financial task force unit essentially in the Commission has drafted this regulation. But what has really been happening, under the surface at the time, was that these emergent use cases, so the DeFi, the NFTs, the DAOs, the stable coins, and so on, have already been, cooking, and they've really exploded in popularity and in use, basically since the day this MiCAR proposal has been published. And the reason that was all of this was possible is because of essentially this game changer that are smart contracts. So all of you know that, of course, decentralized finance, DAOs, and all these amazing things are really made possible by smart contract blockchains such as Ethereum, mostly really Ethereum, but of course also some other kind of related ones. And the kind of the leap of complexity and difficulty, of course, is tremendous, right? And one of the biggest kind of challenges we had as UCI was to explain to regulators in Brussels, who are quite well-meaning generally, and they were like, oh wow, now we have this MiCAR regulation, it's really long and complex and so on, but we're trying to get an understanding of it, and it's this and that, and then we're coming along and we're saying, yeah, that is, that's really kind of regulating the stuff that has kind of become boring, and the really exciting stuff wasn't really on the horizon even of the regulators writing this regulation, which is all this smart contract enabled business logic, really, like we see now with lending protocols, all kinds of tokens, obviously stable coins, decentralized exchanges. So all the crazy stuff that is DeFi, it's really what is interesting here. And the centralized versus decentralized use cases, they are not that easy, obviously, to explain and to understand, in particular if you've never used them, and if you're already struggling to understand, what is a traditional exchange on the blockchain doing now? How does it work in a decentralized fashion? Maybe without an order book, maybe with an automated market maker and all these amazing things. And so this really sets the stage for understanding what MiCAR is, what it is not, what the challenges are with it for the community, for us, what we're doing with UCI, and so on. And of course, I don't have to explain DeFi to this audience. It's the amazing kind of ecosystem that is possible because of this interoperable money Legos, essentially, as they are being called. It's mostly on Ethereum, but happening also on other blockchains. And as you can see in this graph, there has been this explosion in assets kind of staked in the system in different ways. And it really kind of the timing. So when you look at the graph, so MiCAR has been written, this regulation, early 2020, and then was released, between July and October. And basically, right when it was released, really the whole topic only became, super relevant. And kind of the reason we believe it's so important to ensure the continued existence of DeFi is because, although many people say, maybe also rightfully that, DeFi is kind of a bubble, it's speculating on itself, there is no relation to the real world economy. We really like this comparison here that, shows how, the invention of a smartphone, of GPS and other things has led down the road to the creation of, let's say ride-hailing services or other totally unpredictable innovations out of some, abstract building blocks. And DeFi kind of does the same for everything relating to money, finance, investments, and so on. And I think everybody here probably shares that opinion that DeFi, in a few years will have completely changed the financial industry, and we probably won't recognize it anymore. So this is the exact same effect, just repeating here. In particular, the topic of stablecoins is, one of the most important infrastructure pieces to DeFi. They really allow for, payment versus delivery, in a sense, happening on chain with financial assets. And it really, has it really has transformed this fledgling financial community on the blockchain into, a multi-billion-dollar industry. And essentially decentralized fiat money representations like Maker and DAI, but also, tokenized fiat money like Tether, they are really driving this ecosystem. Now, of course, there is a whole other world of stablecoins on the horizon. And most famously, the Diem project, formerly Libra by Facebook, has provoked the European Commission, we believe. We don't know this for sure, but it's kind of what everybody says, so it's probably true, at least to some extent. The announcement of Libra by Facebook at the time has provoked the Commission to be like, okay, we were planning to regulate this crypto stuff. We didn't have a concrete timeline. It would have happened, but now that Facebook wants to disrupt, the European payment system and everything, we're going to do it now, right? And this kind of led to this, we believe, unfortunate timing in the sense of MiCAR. Now, of course, we have this whole question of central bank digital currency also on the horizon, but it's really the timing of Diem that led to the creation of MiCAR, and which is now basically, in a sense, threatening all the stable coins with the regulation as it's currently the case. Let me speed up a little bit. Of course, as I said, stable coins, they are a powerful infrastructure really enabling this revolution that we see in DeFi. I don't have to explain this here. Maybe one interesting observation before we really start about MiCAR is how the US are dealing with MiCAR, just as a, looking over the pond. And it's, there's this really beautiful graph on the right. It looks like a blue circle, but it's not completely blue circle. It basically shows the percentage of how many stable coins are denominated in euro versus how many are denominated in US dollars. And what you thought is a blue circle is really just the 99.5% market dominance of US dollars. And so what we're seeing right now is a complete reproduction of the dollar dominance in this new medium, the blockchain. And Europe and the US are doing everything to to ensure that it stays this way. And for Europe, it means that generally Europe creates a negative sentiment around this idea of issuing a stable coin in Europe. So famously, the German Minister of Finance and the French, I think, Minister of Finance or some others have been saying at the time when Libra was announced that, no way can you do something like this in Europe. No digital coins and no stable coins in Europe that are not, sanctioned by the government. Well, in the US, on the other hand, the banking regulator fully embraces stable coins, and Visa and MasterCard are jumping on it. And basically now everybody, you get the impression of that everybody's now settling their transactions in privately issued stable coins in the US. So a very different sentiment. Now I want to give it over to Simon, who had to listen now for a long time, to basically introduce us into what MiCAR is, what it isn't, what the challenges are, now that we've gotten all this context around it. So Simon, I'm happy to do the slides for you, and thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Florian. And hopefully you all have a vision of our vision, basically on the market and the assets that we are trying to convey to the regulator. So we try to be as educative and as simple as possible in these broad presentations of the trends and of what we see, what we believe will be the future of the crypto assets industry. And of course, we confront this to MiCAR. And there's a few blocking points, of course. As Florian said, MiCAR was drafted really at a time where DeFi was, of course, in a subculture, crypto subculture, quite well known as a potential of the industry. People were already talking about DAOs and NFTs and these kind of things. But outside of the crypto world, it was still something completely unknown. So of course, when the commission started to have a look at the crypto assets to see how they could regulate it, they basically took inspiration from what has been happening in Europe already from a regulatory perspective. There has been a few countries that had created a specific regulation, Gibraltar, Malta, France, Estonia, and they basically only looked at this. And those regulations, they were of course targeting exchanges, custodians, and the likes. And of course, this is the focus of the regulation today. And we'll see how it's there's good things in this, and there's a few things that are probably issues that we are trying to change, of course, in the text. So let's begin. On the next slide, I think, it's a broad presentation of what MiCAR is. So first of all, we talk about MiCAR. There's also another regulation that is the pilot regime. So pilot regime is kind of sandbox that was pushed by a few member states. I think the original idea was from the French regulator, but then it was really taken over by the German regulators. So there's mixed contributions to this. The idea is really to create adapted regulation around securities, so really representation of securities on crypto on blockchains, and to adapt to create a room for adaptation of the existing financial regulation that is very, very strict, very stringent, to the crypto assets use case to help develop those use cases in Europe. We won't spend too much time on this because the pilot regime is not very good. It's really something that has been drafted for banks and other investment companies, CSDRs, MFTs, MTFs. I won't enter into details. It's a very financial focused, so traditional financial focused regulation. And in a few words, it will be only useful for a few actors in Europe and will absolutely not help the crypto assets industry to create security tokens. So that's something that I will put aside for now, and we'll be happy to answer questions on this if you have some, of course, later in the Q&A session. But I will focus on MiCAR. And MiCAR really is what's focused on crypto assets. So crypto assets is everything registered on a blockchain that is not a security. And the scope taken by MiCAR, as already said by Florian and Marina, is extremely broad. MiCAR is trying to regulate all the crypto assets that are existing. So here we have some form of a typology of crypto asset taxonomy that explains, the difference. That's something that we are using also with the regulator to distinguish between the protocol tokens, cryptocurrencies, and then all the application token issued by individuals or projects or DAOs or any kind of issuer on an existing blockchain, and that can or does not have a link with the real world. Well, MiCAR has this one-size-fits-all approach. Everything is a crypto asset except for securities, and we will regulate everything at the same point. So this is the first thing. They want to convey everyone, and then they are targeting the service providers. So the original idea of MiCAR was to say we don't want to do a typology of assets. We don't want to create some differences between different assets, and we will just regulate the people who are touching the assets, i.e. what they are calling the crypto assets service providers. So those service providers is basically the exchange and et cetera, et cetera. So the market participants in the crypto assets world, again, with in mind centralized entities, right? But then we believe that the Commission had a bit of pressure with regard to stablecoins specifically, right? There was a lot of tension, a lot of pressure from the Central Bank of Europe and other people saying, okay, we absolutely need to regulate specifically the stablecoins because they are a potential threat to financial stability, et cetera, et cetera. So they added two titles specifically in the MiCAR regulation that are basically singling out the stablecoins and pushing a very, very stringent regulation on them. And it's a broad definition. There's variation with stablecoins that are euro and then or dollar or anything, and then stablecoins that are gold, and what they call asset reference token. So a token that is referencing an asset that is not a fiat currency, basically. And all those under all those things, they are doing very stringent regulation, very, very harsh. We get more on this later, but they are really trying to push back and to make sure that, as an example, the original project of Libra, with the global currency, would not be deployed in Europe. So that was one of the objectives of MiCAR. And the last thing that they are regulating is the issuance. They are regulating the issuance of the assets. So basically there's three big components on MiCAR as a summary. There's the regulation of the crypto asset service providers. There's the regulation of the stablecoins and asset-backed tokens. And there's the regulation of the issuance of assets in general that are not stablecoins or asset-backed tokens, i.e. ICOs, right? They had ICOs in mind, a bit late also on this one. But anyways, still it's something that is really broad and tries to capture every single kind of issuance, which is of course not adapted at all to liquidity mining things that we see happening on the market right now. We'll get back to this later. So I hope this overview was clear enough. On the next slide, I think, yeah, this is a slide that we are presenting to the regulators and the legislators. I think it's important to, this is also something that we feel deeply important. It's good that the EU decided to regulate the sector. It's great to have actors, and especially centralized actors, that are good actors, that create investor confidence, that creates a new way for citizens to access those new kind of assets. We see what's happening when there's no regulation or bad regulation. The last example has been the Turkish exchange that basically shut down. They were not sufficiently supervised. So supervision can be good, right? If you are a company that operates an exchange, you should probably be supervised at some point to make sure that A, you are dealing properly with the clients and you are protecting the clients and the clients are protected. And B, you are not facilitating money laundering and other shady activities. So this is good in general. And having this regulation in place in Europe can, of course, empower citizens and help everyone use the crypto assets and that can in turn provide alternative source of funding. Of course, you know all about the cost reduction, the transparency, etc., etc. I won't go to the details of this. And of course, growth of the industry, growth and jobs associated with this. So yeah, this is the good side of the regulation. And we'll see what's wrong later. It's a very short list. I won't spend too much time here. It's like, what are the risks that we see with the crypto assets and how the different aspects of the regulation are covering them. So we have MiCAR that is basically positioned in investor and consumer protection and financial stability. This is really the focus of MiCAR. There's a directive specifically on money laundering and terrorism financing that will be updated soon, also with rules, pan-European rules for crypto assets. And then you have, of course, the security, that's like security for acts, etc. And then there's another regulation for that. But let's focus on MiCAR. And again, the objectives are, of course, investor, consumer protection, and financial stability. On the next slide, yeah, here we go to the bulk of the issues. So I have described MiCAR that is really trying to, with the view of the Commission and of the main regulators, that is a market that is basically the traditional financial market, but with new assets, i.e. exchanges, etc. They are trying to bring clarity and to make it so that the market is equal between all the European countries, which are very good objectives again. But then, yeah, they missed two very important things. So the first thing is, of course, the peer-to-peer nature of those assets, and especially the very, very complex peer-to-peer transactions that you can create with smart contracts, i.e. DeFi and other decentralized use cases, DAOs, etc., that are really challenging for a regulator, right? How do you regulate DeFi? How do you capture those transactions? How do you, I don't know, supervise what's happening there? And unfortunately, the way MiCAR is drafted now, it is drafted for centralized entities. There's no question about that. But the scope is so large that they are capturing DeFi use cases inside of the scope, and especially DeFi assets. So, namely, governance tokens, as an example, or the DAI, the decentralized stablecoin. It's captured in MiCAR, and it's even considered as a stablecoin with the very stringent regulation that provides with a obligation of funds in euros, governance inside of the company. Well, all the things that really doesn't make a slight bit of sense if you are thinking about how DeFi is organized, right? The whole point of DeFi is to have all those entities, opaque entities, replaced by transparent smart contracts that are auditable, that you can check, and that you can basically, that you are using by taking your own risks, but also that you can supervise in a way, right? In a way that is not possible through centralized use cases. And this, of course, MiCAR does not consider at all. So this is one of the main points, really the main point that we are discussing when we speak with the regulator, is all about how MiCAR should not target those assets for now, and there should be a specific initiative that really reflects on how a regulation can capture DeFi, and this is a long-term project, etc., etc. So this is one of the main points. I think the second biggest point is really the proportionality, because MiCAR is it's a very big regulation. Like, it's 167 pages long, and it's only the main principles. So it means that every regulator will create its own interpretation of it. So hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulations that we'll have to comprehend and to apprehend and to apply. And this is only for investor protection and for financial stability, right? There's nothing on KYC ML. That is a whole new subject that will be covered later. So in the end, you have a very, very big regulation and with a lot of obligations. So, well, basically one of our messages is just you should take more into consideration that the market in Europe is already lagging, right? It's a very small market. Most of the companies in Europe are smaller than the US or Asian counterparts. If you are imposing standards to those actors that are more stringent than what the competitors are already facing outside of Europe, then you will probably never have a big industry in Europe, right? This is, it's good to have access to the whole of Europe, because that's one of the big benefits of the regulation. You have the same regulation everywhere. But if you are doing this too strong, then of course the actors won't be able to deploy, and you will only have bigger external companies that will operate in Europe that will be able to adapt because they have the means and the financial means to do this, and then the European actors will be stifled and basically disappear. So this is one of the main risks that we see. So DeFi, proportionality are the two really big messages that we are sending to the Commission. And then smaller issues, I would say, there's a few equivalences that are proposed in the text. So basically, if you are a bank or if you are another financial entity, you don't have to respect MiCAR, right? There's a presumption that you are already a very good person and that you will do everything right, which we don't think it's fair. So it's something that we are pushing back also on this. And the last thing is, a few parts of the text make it very clear that the regulator has not really understand how the exchanges operate. As an example, they are asking, to give an example of very absurd requirement, they are asking every single centralized exchange to settle every single transaction on the blockchain daily. which is basically saying to them, you need to be a decentralized exchange. Because apart from this, in terms of costs and operations, it doesn't really make any sense, right? You know that centralized exchange, they only settle at the entrance and at the withdrawal of the deposit and withdrawal of funds, and not in between, because otherwise there wouldn't be centralized exchange. Anyways, so this is one of the things where we want to also push back, of course. But the two main points are really the first two, on DeFi and proportionality. I think it's basically it. Yeah, there's very quickly, there's been a report of the parliament that is not very good. So we've been pushing back on this. And this is something that, but this is a big, more details in this. And yeah, so this is everything that we've seen is wrong in the regulation. And in general, we have seen that the legislator, European legislator, but this is not a complete surprise, is still a bit illiterate or not completely illiterate on crypto assets. So we have pushed a lot with education. We've met with yeah, I don't know, more than 150 people now. The Commission, the Parliament, and the Council members, and we've pushed again with all those points. So what we've achieved right now, it's already good. One of the good things that we've achieved is that in the first, I would say, I won't tell you the details of the procedure, but there's one big component of the regulation of the legislative process of Europe, which is the Council. The Council is made by representative of all the member states. And the Council is working a lot on the text. They are very, under the Portuguese presidency, they've been very pushy on this. And they have heard us in a way that they have entered into the compromise proposal that they have prepared, a specific point on decentralized use cases to exclude them from MiCAR. So this is excellent, and if this goes through, this will be a big win for us and for the whole of Europe, because then you will be absolutely certain that the decentralized use cases won't be regulated under the complete regulation, which is a legal clarity that is not provided anywhere else in the world. So this is something that we are very happy with, and we will continue to push, of course, for this. The pilot regime, on the other hand, has not moved significantly, and we will probably lessen our efforts on this, because we feel like there's such a focus on banks and on other financial institutions that it won't be suitable for the crypto assets industry. We still are pushing for a better regulation and better thresholds for stablecoins, notably, because for now it's so stringent that basically all the existing stablecoins would be hugely regulated, and will probably, well, there's already no euro stablecoin, right? If you are creating rules, terrible rules for stablecoins, then you are basically ensuring that there will never be any euro stablecoin, meaningful euro stablecoin. So this is something that we want to continue push forward. And what we've seen, and this is a new thing that we are exploring, is that some members of the European Parliament, EPs, are open to introduce some form of pilot regime. So the pilot regime that is for securities, but for DeFi. So some form of exploratory regime that would provide for clarity and some kind of safe haven from regulation for the deployment of decentralized use cases, provided that there's a few guarantees or key IDs that are provided. So those are IDs that we are toying with now, and we want to spend more time to draft a concrete proposal for the Commission that would be supported by the Parliament, with regards to DeFi in Europe to provide for really, a safe haven regime, really. I think that's it for this slide. And maybe you want to add something, Marina or Florian, on this, on what we've done, the slide that we just left.
Sorry, I'm struggling with the slides here. No, I think you described that beautifully, Simon, and I just want to highlight again how it's hard to overstate how much kind of work we put into this. So we really had weekly meetings with EU officials explaining over, like this presentation we gave you in some slightly modified form, we've given it to dozens and dozens of EU officials to kind of make them understand that DeFi is something that has been totally overlooked by MiCAR just because of the timing. There's no blame to give to anybody, but that if MiCAR would enter into force unchanged, it would literally ensure that Europe would not be on the map anymore when it comes to this, revolution that crypto assets are unleashing currently on the market. And so we're really proud of our work, but also kind of proud of all these collaborators we found in the EU institutions who were actually, willing to listen to us. And, we don't represent any corporations, any kind of, we're not, professional lobbyists or anything like that. We really just came there with, what we believe is the truth, data, and some anecdotes and some explanations, and it actually worked. So this is extremely encouraging, and to me, in a way, shows that despite all the criticism directed at the political process in general, but also at maybe Brussels in particular, with being over complex, over bureaucratic, and so on, we set out with no special chance to succeed, to try to change this huge piece of legislation, and I feel like we actually did. And this is, to me, really amazing. So that is pretty cool.
That's great, Florian. I also wanted to add that it was surprising to us how open they were, the calls. And, we were actually brainstorming and discussing how we should regulate certain activities, if not as it is regulated right now. And sometimes at the calls, like we really felt like we were heard, and that the other side understood the situation. So yeah, this is also giving us a lot of motivation to continue. So we're doing that for the last 8 months on a voluntary basis, but it has been very, very, I would say, informative, and in a way we have seen the results of our work. So that has been quite an interesting process.
Thank you very much.
And maybe Simon, you just want to do the last slide on this chapter.
Yeah, very nice slide. Thank you, Florian. So this slide, this is maybe a less positive outlook on the future. We've seen that FATF, which is basically a shady non-organization of 35 countries that have gathered together to basically draft rules on KYC AML in general. This agency is extrememely powerful. So they are defining all the standards applicable worldwide on crypto assets, not on crypto assets, on KYC AML, so anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing regulation for the whole financial sector. They are issuing guidance that is basically rules, because the guidance are implemented in law in every single member states of this huge organization. and they are working in a very closed way. They are basically drafting guidance by themselves. They are doing some form of industry discussion, but in a way that makes it very, very difficult to actually participate. They are basically doing the discussion after having drafted the text, which is basically mostly useless. This time, they had a very good idea to, so I think a few member states asked them, okay, we started to regulate crypto assets, but we've seen that there's this DeFi thing happening, peer-to-peer exchanges, all the things. How should we, capture them to the regulation? What do we do? And the FATF worked on this, and they basically decided to expand the definition of what is a crypto asset service provider to everything. So if you are reading the draft regulation that has been out for a few months now, it basically says that if you are deploying a smart contract that is doing a financial transaction, i.e. any kind of DeFi, you should do a KYC on every single of your customer, and you should basically, well, you have to make sure that there's no money laundering or terrorist financing done with your use case, which is a stretch because all the rules are, of course, again, it's the same issue as MiCAR, right? The rules are tailored for centralized entities. And if you are applying them to decentralized entities, it doesn't really make sense because you won't be able to do this, or else you basically destroy the whole value proposal of decentralization, right? We are also working on this. This is not an EU problem, but this is a sufficiently large problem to concern us also. And we, as ADAN, as the association that I'm representing, we've been answering this request for comment, and we have in mind with EUCI to be more active on this field and to become an interlocutor for FATF to help also educate them and to make it so, yeah, the rules are less out of touch with what is actually crypto assets next time. And yeah, this
Awesome.
concludes our presentation, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I think we've been talking for way too long now, and not you, Simon. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean all of us. So I think it's time for a Q&A. I think just before we get there, let me just quickly say we can be supported. So if the work we do is relevant to your business, then you may have an interest in basically enabling us to continue to fight for DeFi. So if that is interesting to you, there are all kinds of benefits for supporting us, then please just reach out to us. There's a bunch of supporters already. And this is our email address, so uci.io is our website. So yeah, if you have any questions, now is the time. Let's have a great discussion.
Thanks so much, guys. So I've seen a question in the chat already, but we can just go ahead. Everybody can just shoot out their questions. Maybe while people are still thinking about questions, I have the first one. When will there be the EUCI token?
We actually discussed this today. We will do an airdrop first, and then we're going to issue an unregulated security just to provoke the commission, I think. No, I'm joking. Great. So no, we're not planning on a token, but however, of course, all kinds of ways to engage a community, which is what we want to do, are interesting to us. So yeah, maybe even a token.
Hi, my name is Peter. We are with AnyBlock Analytics, as I mentioned before, and we are also Bundesblock Mitglied and also therefore member with INATBA. I kind of engaged with INATBA the last year, and I learned it's pretty much useless. So I lost all hope in respect to blockchain and crypto on the higher level than Rheinland-Pfalz, or in the sense of social group. So I'm very much with the feeling of Simon, and we are watching FRTF somewhat closely because we are a data provider, and it's we provide data to people who are very much interested in tainted addresses, sources of transactions, real-time validation, and this is all because of existing FATF rules and interest. But my question is, what if regulation won't fit reality? I suspect EU will do something and they will break things, but in the end, it's like BitTorrent. Nobody cares because the music is in different countries. So there's actually only one layer left, which is WTO, which also does child porn and DCMA, which typically will be used by the USA to enforce tighter regulation on a more global level. That's the only level I fear when things happening there that will trickle down to our legal systems. I suspect EU can do whatever they want because the real world happens elsewhere. And nobody actually can force me do my business somewhere else. And that's actually typically not how regulation works. So it'll work with legal entities who would like to do business out of Europe, and they will be crippled. That's my, for example, we have this Mehrwertsteuer problem on certain transactions, like not in this company, but you have to actually put the Mehrwertsteuer, the VAT, according to the source country, and starting with every first euro. We are selling e-papers in a different company, so I'd have to do this for €3.50. So there's already very, very weird things going on that are hindering growth in the EU. And no minimum amount, no pain, little clearing stelle, or I don't know the English word for it. So I'm looking at it as a really pessimistic point of view. So I hope you will succeed, but still my question, what if it won't fit? If there will be sort of an arms race? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I have an answer. I just thought maybe feel free to complete my colleagues. So I agree with you generally that in general, MiCAR will probably be outdated as soon as it will be out, right? We are only finalizing now the first drafts of it. It won't be out before at least 6 months, more than 6 months for now.
But you estimate this year.
Yeah, but then there's, I think it's 1.5 years before entrance into application. So in the best case scenario, it's 2 years from now. This is the best case scenario. And of course, worst case scenario is like 3-4 years from now, because the discussion can take a very long time. So when we see the pace of innovation and how things are changing so quickly, right? I think 1 year from, if you go back 1 year in the past, nobody saw DeFi exploding. Almost nobody saw DeFi exploding this way, and all those new cases happening and so quickly, right? So what will happen in 2-3 years? That's completely out of the field of our imagination, right? So of course we know that MiCAR will be outdated. This is like a fact. What we want to avoid, and this is where we're really focusing our efforts, is that MiCAR, by entering into place, basically forces the European companies to shut down part of their activities because they would be illegal under MiCAR. And this is really what we just want to avoid. That's really damage control. And here, I think we have a pretty good chance of success because we have trends developing that we can show, and we have also a knowledge of what's happening really, and we really try to be as educative as possible, and we feel like our interlocutors, they see that MiCAR is already not good for, even if it's something that is very new and very innovative, they see that if they are thinking 2 or 3 years in the future, this won't be good, right? So this is really what we want to do. And I think on this, we have a reasonable good chance of success.
So I think the answer from Simon answers partially the question from Ivo Marinovic, who asked for whether there will be more clarity from the EU compared to the SEC. So you pointed out that at least in 2 years, in a best case scenario, that we have some more clarity here in the market. Then we have another question from Ray from Malaysia, who I think from abroad observe what the EU is doing. And he asked, what's your opinion, Simon, Marina, and Florian, from comments from Christine Lagarde regarding CBDC. What's your thought on that and your opinions that the more pro-bank and against crypto? So we can only see what the mass media is, but you talk directly with MEPs, maybe you have more insights or opinions about that.
Let you answer first, Simon.
Okay. So I'll start again. I've with Aidan, we've been able to discuss with the ECB because we had answered to the consultation on the digital euro. So we had the occasion. So Christine Lagarde was not there, unfortunately, but we had the chance to discuss with the team that is actively, thinking about what the digital euro will look like. And yeah, so I can only confirm that, but I think there's a few different currents, like there's the risk-averse people that really want to basically keep things as they are today and make sure that the system remains stable, the lowest amount of risk possible. So those people are really, really, really afraid with what's happening in DeFi, what's happening with stablecoins, because they see like this whole wave of innovation that is basically recreating from scratch everything with new rules, with no applicable regulation, with peer-to-peer transactions. Well, it's, it's a bit like you are producing music when internet arrives, right? You are afraid, basically. And it's a bit aggravated at the ECB level because the ECB its mandate, its stability, its financial stability in Europe, and it's preserving the value of euro. So when you have this in mind, you see how their approach of a digital euro is, they have a bias for risk-averse analysis. This is what they are paid for. So this is, of course, the context in which they are thinking. The good thing is that they are still seeing what's happening, right? They cannot completely ignore it. They have been ignoring it for quite some time, actually, but they have received a lot of answers to the consultation that have directed them through open blockchains, crypto assets, and all the potential that has been, developing there. So now they know. I think a year ago they didn't really think it was important, but now they have this in their radar. They are still in the reflection phase, and the team with whom we have discussed, they seem maybe a bit more open that the public positions of the ECB. The issue is, I'm sure you all have in your different walks relations with big companies or big structures. You always have a team that is favorable to crypto, but then as soon as things go up in the hierarchy, then it's a bit complicated. So there's hope, but really a bit smaller amount of hope that the ECB really sees what's happening with the crypto assets and tries to create a digital euro that is basically interoperable with public blockchains, where we could really, this could be a very, very big and very interesting tool for the crypto assets industry. But this is a very small hope. So yeah, I won't count too much on this.
Thanks, Simon. So any further questions in the crowd?
Do you guys see any dynamic in discussions between like the SEC and the European regulator, the US regulator, and others? Is there sort of an exchange between them? And as Peter sort of hinted at, maybe it's going to be taken to the next level, which would be something like the WTO or something. Do you see any dynamics there? Any discussions? Any forums where this is going on?
They have been actively exchanging since the bull run in 2017 with the ICO craziness. There were a number of meetings at the Wharton Business School where SEC members met with European regulators and also Asian regulators. Some people also, like BaFin was there, the Swiss FINMA was there, the Liechtenstein FMA was there, the MAS was there. So like really all the jurisdictions where people, go to sell shit coins were present, and they were, kind of debating enforcement and token classifications and, what's security and also all these questions. So they very much are in touch. But recently our feeling is that there has been a change of attitude in the United States, much more than in Europe, where essentially really nothing happened. But in the US, somehow there was a realization that, hey, we actually just have to do some very few things, and everything, we will own everything again in the end, just like in the prior internet revolution. And so they're doing exactly that. So they are sanctioning private stablecoins, saying, hey, banks, you can use that stuff, and you can, create financial instruments using crypto assets. And so a lot of affirmative positive signals and permissions being given out in the crypto space. And so the US is reestablishing its dominance in this space, whereas the European players are very left alone, and they have no guidance, no positive sentiment in that regard. So I don't know how much there is a kind of exchange really at the moment. There has been a interesting publication by Hester Pierce from the SEC, the crypto mom, I think is her nickname. She published it on GitHub, some kind of hands-off approach, some kind of, sandboxy type approach to token issuances and so on, really, just letting the space evolve while calling out obvious fraudsters and so on. And so the SEC is really going its own way now, which is a very pro-innovation way, whereas in Europe, we don't really see this. We rather see this kind of turn against stablecoins at the moment. But yeah, as we said, we really try to make them see the light on this regard, but it's very difficult at the moment, in particular with stablecoins.
And maybe it's not just about European companies, it's about other companies coming to the European market. So that's, I think we've been discussing with some of them, and like the question you pointed out, what is the alternative if MiCAR is not going to be, supportive of this kind of activities? So maybe just, the European market will not be interested for them anymore, or will not be interested in the future. So that could be one bad outcome. Maybe I see we have the second question from Daniel, if I can take this, Jacob.
Yep.
It's not, the proposal is not public, so we cannot comment it, but in a way, what we can say is that it's been kind of an interesting development, and some of the parts are just are kind of more clear and more friendly from the user perspective, because just in general, I don't know if we stated this through this presentation, but we are very supportive of this holistic approach and of having like legal clarity in Europe. So we'll not have one German law and one law from Malta regarding crypto assets, but this will be a big market where European companies and also companies from other like countries can come and support this ecosystem. Maybe, I don't know, Simon or Florian would like to add something.
I would actually like to add something to the topic before. We don't fear the WTO because we see, and I agree with Florian on that, the US already sees opportunity. For the US, it's over. They are now buying Bitcoin. It's done. The opportunity is much, much bigger, and the establishment is already bought. We have clear signals that this is, again, a part of the American dominance, even in a military aspect as well, to try to dominate the world. And we actually have interesting approaches there. And one is, for example, the evaluation of Coinbase. Coinbase will be coming to Germany, and Germany will be crushed. We know that for a fact. We talk to people. This is a serious matter. And there's another one, not from the US, Binance will do the same. And so obviously there might be a European market, especially in the exchange and little tokenization aspects. But the little players from here can compete with already well-established big players. And they are making more profit, and they are bigger than established banks. So this is serious bullets, and they are already in place. And our experience and feeling is seriously that the US is already very much pro the whole thing, and just going for the profits and for the markets, digitizing the markets. We actually see that. We are Chainlink operator, for example, Chainlink Oracle operator, too complex to explain. But one of the things the synthetic project is about to do, they will bypass the exchanges for stocks. They are already on their way to tokenize stocks, and they will have 24/7 trading with instant settlement and clearing. So T+2, which is the current mode of operation on exchanges, is dead. It'll take this year. Deutsche Börse, Clearstream will have troubles down the road. And you can try to regulate that, but it'll happen. And I don't think US will regulate it, because they will make the business then with Coinbase, and maybe NASDAQ buys Coinbase, Coinbase buys synthetics. I don't know who's buying who at the end, but it will be the US. So I'm actually very bullish on this, because we have very clear signals, and we see actually a lot of action going on. So they are working on it actively. That's my take on this.
So when are you moving to Miami, Peter?
Oh, won't, never. I might need a Delaware company, possibly. But no.
Oh, that's right where your company will be, but then the house is Miami, right?
Yeah.
For tax reasons.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Peter, for your insight and observation. You got a thumbs up from Ray from Malaysia. I've seen that.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I hope he's in KL. Hi to KL.
I am in KL.
Yeah, awesome. Good place to be. Excellent food and weather.
Thank you.
Okay.
And actually, there's Etherscan in KL. It's like they're big on crypto.
Etherscan is a Malaysian, yeah.
Yeah.
So, folks, any other further?
So given that the crypto and DeFi is moving at light speed, right? Is there any point at all to attempt regulation? Because the regulation are always going to be 2 to 5 years behind, right? What you're trying to regulate is maybe it's better to just leave it for 5 years and then begin regulating then when it has stabilized a little bit. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, we generally agree, but we think there is more than just doing nothing. There could be a way to. So one thing that we see is that a lot of projects in the space that right now are creating DeFi projects and so on, they are concerned with the legality of what they are doing, and they would really be very happy if they would have some straight guidelines of what is allowed and what is not allowed. The reality is they don't have that, and this makes them sleep bad at night, right? So they would give a lot for legal security. So we think there is a chance to create something like a sandbox. People hate the word, as the regulators hate the word, but let's call it that for now, just for the sake of argument, where you could let's say sign up as a project and say, hey, I want to do something crazy. It's going to be innovative, it's going to be inclusive, it's going to be good for Europe, but we might not be able to adhere to all the rules potentially, but we want to do it in the open. We want to do it together with some kind of agency on the EU level, let's say, and we can all learn together, and we can all maybe develop ways how to ensure and guarantee certain things, like there is no terrorist money laundered through that service, and there is no tax evasion promoted with this, and so on. And then in this environment, innovators can innovate and regulators can learn and ultimately draft regulation that fits this DeFi scheme. And there are a few things that we think are interesting. One is something around DAOs, so giving DAOs maybe some sort of legal personality, maybe some sort of limited liability, maybe some sort of governance rules that make sense. So this kind of area. And the other one is around what is today called self-sovereign identities. So some ability to have some kind of KYC passport attached to a wallet. That actually says, hey, I'm a legitimate person, I'm paying taxes, I'm not a terrorist, these kinds of things, and being able to use decentralized applications with such a system in place to ensure that you have both the innovative stuff, but also the KYC ML compliance, as they like to call it. So these are the areas we're thinking in, and there is a lot of interest actually also on the institutional side to listen to this and to consider this.
Yeah, because at the moment, like MiCAR is not addressing these questions directly. So we think that if we will make the distinction between decentralized and decentralized use cases, we also need to understand what decentralization is, how to define it, and also give guidance, as Florian said, to the existing projects, because of course, like there's a lot of innovation going up on, but at the same time, the lawyers that are dealing with these projects, if they have any in the team, they definitely cannot sleep at night. So I think legal clarity is something that we are definitely looking for.
And it's not all bad. So the FATF is actually created for good reason. And yes, there is lots of money being to criticize motive, money floating around in crypto, definitely. So for those who want to know, there's an interesting newsletter from Chainist, who is the biggest follow the money company in this respect. Danish company, went to the US. There's always like only 5 headlines or something in this newsletter, but it's very interesting. And you get a very good feel that the FATF is there for a reason, or there's significantly money being moved for, let's call it, bad purposes. I think you actually also can't do nothing. So, but what I like is the approach is if you change it to fiat, at the end, it needs to go to fiat somewhere. So if you control what you can do with crypto in the sense of real world assets, buying buildings and stuff, as long as crypto stays in the digital world, it's not much use for adversaries. They need to change it to fiat or assets or something. And this is actually a quite easy place, as we already do that, to regulate and identify players. So that I like quite a lot in the beginning, but now it's getting into the system. Like, for example, regulating DeFi will be hell. I don't, Florian mentioned the categorization of tokens. We are part of ITSA. It's big, that categorization, and it needs to be differentiated. It's a huge undertaking. Doing things badly, my take would say 90% likely. So better do nothing for all tokens in general, because it's big and it's growing and it's evolving. But overall, I would say in the EU regulation, again, 80% probably doing more bad than good out of my perspective. So I'm still with the Americans. Liberal markets, take the money, tax it. Like the Americans learned from the whole cannabis story. Let it run, tax the heck out of it, just make the money. And the EU always wants to like getting involved, doing it better, whatever. They just go for the money. Yeah. That's what I like with the US. They're straightforward, and now we are bored, we just take the money.
I have a question, Florian, Simon, and Marina. So on the EU level, there are different kind of activities regarding blockchain. Also, we have the EU Blockchain Observatory Forum. We have the EPSI, so the Experience Future, so the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure. Do you have any insights there, how they work? Do they have exchanges or knowledge exchange with the MEPs, or do they advise them, or they are working on different departments and don't talk each other? So what we typically see in corporate worlds, that they one part is doing this, the other doing that, but no one's talking about to each other. So do you have any insights there? I mean, they try to regulate something on EU level, but they have on the neighborhood, someone is doing stuff.
So the EU Observatory is really a kind of information gathering and dissemination body, and they educate the public, but also members of parliament and so on. They don't produce any kind of regulation or anything. They are more like, you know, looking what's happening in the market, and they report it back. Kind of, that's what they do. I don't think they are very impactful. They are there, but they are, yeah, there. And then there is the European Blockchain Partnership, and the European Blockchain Partnership is a voluntary association of member states. I think it pretty much comprises all of them now. I'm not sure, but most of them. And in this voluntary association, they develop standards and use cases for blockchain in Europe. And they have 2 prime things they do. It's the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure and the European Self-Sovereign Identity Framework. And these things are quite influential. So for example, recently was like, I was on Twitter and I was, saying in a very sarcastic manner, the EU wants to make a digital a vaccination passport, and I'm sure nobody's talking to the EPSI people or to the European Self-Sovereign Identity people who are, have the perfect thing for this. And then a guy from the EU actually was tweeting, no, they're talking to each other. I made sure. So I think there is some, cross-pollination, but of course, it probably could be much better.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, your like external team who will intercept in the process. So this could be like if they have already those people working that they can show signals, early signals that if those drafts of like MiCAR is in progress, they can also internally advise them prior to like the market is trying to explain them how you are doing it. So this what I don't understand why it's not happening earlier than needing some external people to educate them. Yeah,
I mean, there has
Thanks.
been consultations with regards to MiCA, but I also wanted to distinguish these organizations that focus on blockchain in general, and this regulation is really focusing on crypto assets. So it's kind of a combination of the old how we call it, financial system, and for example, some of the regulations. MiCA has been inspired also from what we see in the financial system regulation. So it's for me as a lawyer, it's also very revolutionary that we think that like a technology that didn't exist, 12 years ago or like 20 years ago now has produced like some sort of crypto assets that are not financial instruments, but at the same time, they're so new that they need completely a new regulation and a completely new law. So yeah, it's been interesting, but definitely we do support collaboration and discussion. We really see that this is really needed.
In respect to that, do they really all need completely new regulations? Like, for example, in the ITSA, it's they have this classification table, ICT, and quite a few of them are actually pretty much exactly like money, for example. So I would, that would actually be one of the entry points for me to say, which one of them, based on what features? And so, because I think one of the biggest problems with politics is that it's hard to differentiate for them to regulate or draft laws, because the token world is already quite diverse. But I think one could do better if you concentrate on a bunch of them that are very comparable to existing things and then treat them accordingly. One of my problems with MiCA is it wants to cover it all. And I think that is already a logical bad approach on something that is moving so fast. As, for example, Simon said, it will be old anyways. So maybe we can concentrate on something that we are pretty sure of, because it's very comparable feature-wise to something that is already existing. And that's actually something what the US did, the SEC. They said, it's like, for now we treat it like. And that's an interesting approach for regulating something new.
Yeah, we go into discussion of like terminology and how we define certain things. Like, for example, how you define a utility token or an NFT or like security token, as we call them. So MiCA is referencing to, of course, MiFID and other, for example, e-money directives, and trying to distinguish between the use cases that we see today. But yeah, it's some of the definitions are completely new and have just been defined in MiCA.
But my take would be leave them out or put them in a 1 sandbox and concentrate on the ones we are really sure. or we are more or less more sure?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, but what I wanted to add and why we think that our work is actually valuable is that we are trying to combine like being proactive, but being at the same time very realistic. So we have this information, what can be actually done, you know, in the next months with the amount of effort that we can give into this project, but at the same time, trying to shape it in a way that will also support innovation. And what we're doing is also responding to some of the activities very timely. I think that's also crucial. So if you think about it, we might have another month or two, or maybe a little bit more, to try to define how this regulation will shape the industry in the next years. So we are discussing about the text, but then we'll have a few years well, this is going to, you know, come into action. And then I'm sure that in 2 or 3 years, there will be a lot of news and articles written about MiCAR, but will be already too late. So it will be the time when the startups will need to comply. But now is the time to, you know, to discuss and to talk.
But that is very hard. I hope you succeed, but it sounds very, very hard.
Thank you.
They shared with them us that they like the pain. We have Florian, who asked, Florian Krause has one question regarding his observation of this discussion right now, that what he looks or sees that security tokens like Monero or private coins, that they the consequences regarding the discussion or the MiCAR regulations, that they probably be forbidden soon. What's your take on this? So private coins and security tokens like Monero.
I would say it's really hard to be, it will be hard to be anonymous under this regulation. So it's like what MiCAR says, that if you want to issue a token, you need to be incorporated, and you need to be incorporated in Europe. So we can think about the consequences of this for like decentralized use cases, for example. But
that's something I would argue that won't happen. That's wishful thinking. Bye EU. Nobody cares. It's already out of the box. It's Pandora. It's like, it's over.
That's for new issuance, for new tokens. Like,
even though, same, the world is bigger than the EU and nobody cares. That's something we need to learn. There's many more people somewhere else, and money will go where things will happen. And that's something the US actually learned and embraces. China even more. I think the approach is very much useless. Whoever thinks anywhere in the world this could happen, no, not my experience.
We have another open question. Sorry, Peter. So we have Miguel. He asked whether examples of other countries and regulators, like here he mentioned Ethiopia, if they adopt a technology, whether those examples can help for the regulators in the EU. So do they look at other countries or outside of EU or other continents?
I think it's really hard to know how much they look into other countries. But what is very certain is that this is the first use case of a like overarching approach from a regulator in the world. So it's basically similarly, a lot of people talk about GDPR. It's very similar, and we think that we are now thinking and discovering very like new concepts and trying to find solutions to some of the problems that other countries might also do in the future. And it's definitely going to be the whole process with MiCAR is going to be looked at from different countries for sure. There is also one similar regulation coming out from Andorra, for example. I guess it was inspired by MiCAR. I don't understand Catalan that much that I can tell you more about this, but I think, you know, new regulations are coming for sure. But yeah, this is quite unique from the approach that the EU has taken.
Yeah, I'm really cannot still wrap my head around how DeFi will be regulated. So, for example, how you can explain this to the MEPs. I think Simon or Florian mentioned that crypto asset service providers will be regulated. But in DeFi, if I have a DEX or I do liquidity providing and have peer-to-peer lending, and the protocol is a DAO, and there's no institution really backing it, so how you going to regulate that? So am I a crypto service provider as soon as I put 10 ETH on the protocol? So let's say the internet, and we have 10,000 nodes who do the transactions and validations. Also, how I cannot imagine this.
You already have that. You already have that. It's called a bank.
Well, I think it's a very good question. There's because first of all, the first exchanges we had with the regulator, we explained to them, you know, centralized. They really discovered this. They didn't know about this. So, but then they were like, okay, but if they are completely decentralized, there's no company, there's nothing. Okay, if it's completely decentralized, then well, we can understand why you want to put it out of the regulation. But you know, Uniswap, there's a company. Maker, there's a company. It's a foundation. All those. Aave has a company in the UK. You're telling me it's decentralized, but at the same time, there's a company that raises funds, that employs people, that you know. So decentralization, it's a bit of a spectrum, right? And there's the application, like you are deploying a protocol, but then there needs to be someone that deploys the protocol, that creates the protocol, and that controls, or maybe that gives up the control. But at some point, there's, you know, there's a project, there's something, and even if the creators are anonymous, sometimes there's a lot of projects that have actually point of contacts, and this is where the regulator wants to target. And this is specifically with the FATF, that's what they have in mind. They are saying if you are deploying a token, if you are deploying anything, then you are captured. And MiCAR, there is a risk that the text as it is now, they're basically capturing, you know, the MakerDAO Foundation, this kind of actors. So, of course, you cannot completely prohibit DeFi. That's not possible, because as soon as the use case is deployed, then it will be used. It can be used, and someone else can create an interface, and someone else can. So this is something that you cannot ban. But you can hinder it so much in Europe that it basically is only used by connoisseur people that really know the crypto asset. And we want the crypto assets industry to grow and to, you know, to become something bigger than it is now. So if we are thinking about today, yeah, of course we could do with the regulation. But if we want crypto assets industry and the public blockchain space to basically eat the financial world, we want to have a regulation that allows it, and this is what we are trying to do. So, yeah, to answer your question, you cannot ban DeFi. You can ban centralized entities to touch DeFi. You can ban people to deploy DeFi, and you can target people that you know have deployed DeFi use cases.
And use it. You can target them as well.
And you can target users, yeah.
Might not
specifically
be
for when the user is also, like, for example, in Maker, the user is also an issuer.
Yeah, this is what I mean. So you're not a service provider like an entity, right? Or when I do a flash loan, and you can do some tweaky stuff, and then at the end, people lose money. Who will be in charge, right? The protocol, the entity, the organization who deployed smart contract, or the flash loan, the developer. So there are so many entities involved, or building blocks. And then you want to, of course, to save the investor or the user, but then you need to like go all along the deep hole and find at the end the person who is in charge. And it's not easy, maybe possible, but that's what I had in mind when you want to regulate DeFi. As you mentioned in the introduction or in the explanation, that those who touches the asset, right? I think this was the word, but who touches the asset is a lot of hands touch the assets in the process.
And just to give an example of how this could work, targeting users. So when you use the BitTorrent network in Germany, you automatically, basically a few weeks later, get a letter from a law firm in Munich telling you to transfer 1,000 euros to the bank account, right? That's just automated. So imagine in the future, you could get a letter from the Financial Market Authority telling you to transfer whatever funds you made to their bank account. So they made it happen with copyright. They could make it happen with securities law as well.
Not true. They're hindering copyright trouble, but it's costly. And it uses the WTO as a means of oppression. So this is debatable, I would say, at least, and the success as well. And the goals are mostly solid goals, like child pornography and stuff. So you could actually, there's, yeah, and then you get support out of the industries. But for plain old copyright, I wouldn't go for all WTO states. DMCA, for example, yeah. Oh, mostly. Could you imagine to raise that on a DMCA WTO level, the regulation based on EU interests and activities, not just MiCAR?
You mean if regulation could be, or enforcement of regulation could happen on the WTO level in the future?
So DMCA obviously goes down to the user, and it gets approached by, for example, social media platforms or any aggregator in some sort. That works pretty well for everyone in development country. For everyone else, pretty much doesn't care and isn't on the target list yet. So and it's from the US. So could the EU by any chance be able to do that with some act via WTO? What's your take? I don't even think they are capable, because the US would just shut them down as EU. So that's my take on it, but I would like to get your take.
I don't know, frankly.
Yeah, that's not something we've looked at yet, but that's a very interesting point. And of course, the level the FATF thing means that shows that a lot of things will also go up one level, right, to worldwide organizations. So yes. That would be interesting to watch, and to, of course, to contribute if we are able to.
I'm actually interested what China's take is on that, if they come on that level because they have interests.
I'm not sure how much time you still have, Florian, Marina, Simon. We have one last question, I think. If there's no other one, I would suggest that we can wrap up the Q&A. And so there's Daniel, who asked, do you think MiCAR will shift the market more towards decentralized exchanges? Could Uniswap, Sushi, etc. be captured by this regulation, or are they completely outside of the scope?
That is a great question. In the MiCAR proposal that you can see online that is public, there is a really weird provision. I think it's Article 68 or something, that says that all the exchanges have to settle all their transactions every day on the blockchain. And this provision makes really no sense when you know how blockchains operate. But if that should, stay inside MiCAR, then essentially centralized exchanges will have lost all their advantages relative to decentralized exchanges. So I think we will only have decentralized exchanges in the EU if MiCAR enters into force like that. But jokes aside, yes, I think MiCAR, it's not MiCAR that is really the driving force to more DEXs. I think this is just the market going there, really. I don't think it needs MiCAR for this.
Yeah, but I think it's a very interesting point that over-regulation can actually push people towards more decentralization and towards more, because we've seen that it's a completely different subject, but it's parallel. In France, I'm sure it's the same in Germany. It's very, very, very hard to open a bank account if you are a crypto asset company. Like if you are dealing with crypto, you are buying, selling crypto. So this has pushed a lot of companies in France to have a very, very limited bank account and to basically do all their transactions in stablecoins. So the regulation, the fact that the banks are not willing to take those clients and the regulation is not set in place, and so all those things, they're basically pushing for more use of DAI, USDC, etc. So it's more decentralization or more use of US-based products, right? In the end,
there we go.
I mean, look at the interest rates you'll get. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just natural aggregation of wealth and money, because banks cannot pay that interest rate which you have with stable coins. I mean, you get 30% of APY in real time, right? So it's just fact that that's why they keep little on the bank account, and it's just a question of time when the USDC or USDT, they have already, according to your number, 99.5%. So they dominate already. So that's what I also see.
But maybe just to add something, I think we need to be realistic at the same time. Like we are talking about the consumer, like the average consumer. And of course, if we're talking about, Sushi Swap and Uniswap, a lot of people, they're not tech or financially savvy enough to use it. So if we, again, going back to what Simon said, I think it's very important to what is the market of a service like this? Like how many people are going to use a service like this in the next years? Because like we're doing the education, like we're doing it, you're doing it, everyone that is in the space is talking about it, are writing articles, but again, it's like very, very slow process.
Yeah.
But there are many students, for example, in Frankfurt School, they are taking their fiat, they're putting to crypto.com, they are taking the new credit cards. It's like kind of like with a mobile phone. They are already native there and they are paying bills with it. So it is coming with apps to the end user and consumer.
Yeah, before we started this meetup, I had to talk with Jacob and Christian, that friends of mine, so like average non-native crypto natives, starting to ask me, hey, Jan, how I can use crypto, right? So it's and those signals shows that there is more and more interest. But besides that, I like the slide where you have this categorization of established, emerging, and primitives. What I see is something new upcoming is that you have all these bridges now of you have the secret network, you have Polygon, so all bridges, not side chains, but they serve a specific purpose. So secret network for private transactions. This is not yet, I see not yet in the categorization and it's also popping up now this year. So it will next year, if MiCAR comes out, or the new proposal, this kind of new category will need to be also considered again. So because they are totally making KYC and also transaction more blurry, and also with Bitcoin, with the Taproot which is coming up, so Bitcoin be more private. So this thing I would like to see more what's up here. Okay, so I see that people are going.
Yeah, maybe one last thing I wanted to add, and in my opinion, I think your work is really, really remarkable, and I think it's really important, since regulators need a starting point and they need to get some education in all this crypto stuff. So I think this is really, really cool what you're doing, and really important. And I mean, at the end, maybe it's not that crucial to cover all the participants within this network, right? Since in the end, I think if crypto will go mainstream in the future, it will be in some way like platforms operate. So we will have some platform providers, and under the hood there will be some crypto stuff, DeFi stuff going on, but end user, it's something that an end user doesn't care much about it, right? So in the end, it's more like you have to regulate all these providers of this platform, and if there are still some crypto natives doing things with the protocols by themselves, it's pretty okay, since most of all these participants are regulated via regulation of the platforms. So great! It's really great to have you here as guests and to hear what you're doing. So thanks a lot.
Maybe next year again, and see what the version 3.0 of MiCAR will be.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Big pleasure.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Big pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye, Simon.
Good evening.
Bye, Florian.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Marina.
That was fun.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Ray to Malaysia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.